So apparently there's a new Netflix series called Florida Man. Or it's on Hulu or one of those networks. But, it's the kind of show that just writes itself.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it?
It is. I actually saw some Florida man get arrested this week because he brought an alligator into a Quickie Mart type place to buy beer, and he doesn't remember A, having the alligator, or B, being there. And there's like videos of him running in with an alligator and chasing people and grabbing beer.
That's like Florida Man has done that several times in several locations. He just keeps popping up in the news.
I think we should have Florida Man bingo, alligator, beer, all the squares. Promise people would win too quickly.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't remember winning.
Right.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. It was a kind of a funny, ironic week for hacking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some throwbacks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's some funny stories here. Some not so funny. We'll talk about the never used charging ports in airports. We'll dive into that one. But first, I think we'll start with my favorite story, which is thieves cut through coffee shop wall to pull off $500,000 Apple Store heist.
Yeah. This is fascinating because we're always worried about the digital side. And I think a lot of people do. They worry about, like, how do I protect my phone? How do I protect my business? How do I protect whatever? But, somebody cuts through the wall. Apparently that still works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So physical security is the number one layer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Without physical security, because no matter how, very few software products will allow you to withstand physical access to the device.
Right.
I was teaching a SQL class many, many moons ago. It was 20 plus years ago. And this was, I was teaching like SQL 7. That was that long ago.
Huh.
And one guy was in the class on the second day and he jumped up. He got a phone call. He jumped up and he ran out of the room. And this was a time when not everybody had a cell phone. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Gone. Actually, I think he might have even had a pager. His pager went off.
Wow.
And he went out and made a phone call and he didn't come back till like Thursday. And I said, what's going on? Was it something I said? And he's like, no, we have a data center. It's on the second floor and some thieves had had stolen all the servers by coming in through the window. That was a day when Windows were in data centers. That's not a thing anymore.
Oh man.
They stole 16 of his servers, including some of his database servers. And that, they're not meant to be stolen. They needed a really high ladder. It wasn't a window they thought people would get through.
Mm.
But you got to think about that outside the box physical security stuff.
Oh, okay. So I question this article just a little bit, and here's why. Because in the first line they say, burglars pull off an elaborate $500,000 heist. Now I've seen construction workers at work. How elaborate is it to cut a hole in the wall? Do you think?
Well, to not get electrocuted is a little elaborate.
Well, that's true.
They tunneled through the bathroom wall of an adjoining coffee shop.
Like Shawshank.
So, yeah. Now, so they use their knowledge of the mall's layout and to do that. But how could they do that without getting noticed? I mean, that's a pretty big hole.
You hide in the bathroom at night. Oh, well, yeah. That's true.
Oh, so they broke the locks after they closed on Sunday night and cut a square out of the drywall in the bathroom.
There you go.
From there, they could crawl through to the other side and into the Apple Store without tripping any of the security systems.
That's the elaborate part.
Which is surprising because you would think they'd have to case that joint first to make sure that there are no motion sensors pointed in the back warehouse.
I would think that Apple would have sharks with lasers on their heads or something like that.
So this is funny. It says when Apple Store employees came into work the next morning, they saw that, quote, an entire wall of iPhones, approximately 436 of them, were gone.
Now, you know what would have been brilliant is if these guys then put the wall back and sheetrocked it so that it was just completely nice and pristine.
Oh, they have pictures. Like they tweeted pictures of the bathroom with the hole in the wall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So this reminds me of a great movie. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a Woody Allen movie called Small Time Crooks.
Oh, I haven't seen it. No.
And it's from the year 2000. So I'll just give you a synopsis because this is awesome. So Woody Allen is married to Tracy Ullman.
Oh.
And and he's always scheming with his buddies playing poker about, whatever. And so one of them has the brilliant idea to buy a storefront that's next to a bank. And they're going to have a front for the store. So, but basically they're going to, buy this and put in a store and then tunnel through the basement to the bank. And, Woody asked Tracy Ullman if she would, make a cookie business, like selling cookies. Right. And of course she thinks he's off his rocker, but everybody likes her cookies. So she begrudgingly goes in. On it, and these guys get to work. So the long and short of it is they tunnel through and they come up like inside the bank, like not in the vault, but inside. Like people are just like looking at them as they tunnel through, and they get up, and there's like police, with guns. That's just the last of it. Meanwhile, the cookie business takes off and they get rich.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. And now they're and it's small time crooks because they don't have any culture or any kind of, they don't know what to do with their money. And the accountants end up taking it all.
Wow.
So, but
story old as time.
Hilarious movie.
The cookie business / bank heist / accountants stealing money.
I wonder what the traceability is on these iPhones, given they weren't activated, and whether Apple has a way to track them.
I guarantee you Apple knows every single one of the serial numbers of those phones.
They probably do,
if they show up anywhere other than for parts, you're not going to be able to light those up. Or unless it's in another country. You probably could offload them in China pretty easily.
So there's a phenomenon that goes on here in New Hampshire where if you go to the mall, you'll see a bunch of Chinese nationals waiting in line, in a separate line, a special line at the Apple store.
Mm-hmm.
And they're waiting to buy blocks, like 10 at a time of iPhones. And the story is that they take them, they buy as many as they can, they bring them to Boston where they'll be smuggled into China. And then they make enough money to get paid in Boston so that it's worth the trip from China for them to do this.
It's insane.
And they'll anytime
Aren't they made in China?
Yeah, it's a long trip all the way back.
They're not sold. They're not unlocked. They're not probably traced by the government. I don't know. I don't understand the appeal.
I mean, I guess a more elegant crime would be to steal them from the factory.
Right?
Oh, well.
Anyways, old-fashioned cybercrime. Does this qualify as cyber? I guess it is.
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
It's physical theft.
Our next story is definitely cyber. It's Google Chrome emergency updates to fix 0 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is the second time, if I remember correctly, this year that Chrome's had an issue. And honestly, these are there's everybody that uses Chrome. Chrome is very pervasive in different types of systems and on Android devices, and you name it, Chrome's kind of everywhere. So what's interesting about this particular hack is this is what's known as a type confusion hack. So this is a high severity 0-day vulnerability. For those of you who love tracking CVEs or like to have them tattooed in your arm or whatever, this is CVE 2023, the year 2033, which is the number that have happened this year. So there's a little over 2033 CVEs that have happened this year that are.
What's the severity of it?
So the severity, 27.
It's a 10-point range.
Yeah. I don't remember what the severity of this one is. It's high. And the interesting thing about it, I want to say it's like in the 8 or 9.
Okay.
I'd have to go look again. But what's interesting about this is this involves two different types of very sort of interesting exploit tactics. One is type confusion in the local JavaScript engine. So type confusion is an interesting one and is used quite a bit. What type confusion is in languages that are not strongly typed. And what do I mean by strongly typed? So for you developers out there, if you create a variable, you usually tell the compiler what that variable is. hey, this variable is going to be an integer. This variable is going to be a Boolean. This variable is going to be an object of some sort, right?
Or a string, or some string of characters.
Or a string, or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. But in some languages, like Python, for example, you just say, hey, I want a variable. And there is no type to it, right? Mm-hmm. You could put a string in there. You could put a number in there. You could put a Boolean in there. It doesn't matter, right? So in some languages where you have that fluidity of not typing the variable, when a variable comes in, it doesn't know whether it's what it should be or not. So I'll give you an example. Let's say we're expecting a Boolean. Like, should the user be an admin, or should this code be able to do anything it wants on your computer? And we're expecting the Boolean of false or the Boolean of true to come in, right? And it should always be false, right? This code shouldn't be able to do whatever it can. But as we know, Carl and Patrick and I are all developers. False in programming language can also be 0.
The result of an equation.
It could be the result of an equation, right? Absolutely. So you could easily say, I'm going to, instead of, if I could get that false to be the number 1, well, the number 1 equates to true. The number 2 equates to true. The number 3 equates to true. Anything that's not 0 usually equates to true. A string equates to true.
Yep.
So if I can manipulate the memory in a way where when it goes to check, should I have admin access to this computer, and it comes back with some garbage, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's not 0, it'll give me access to the box. That's one part of this exploit is a type confusion.
Okay.
Another part of this exploit is heap grooming. So I know. What are you grooming? Wait, I've heard about this by the police stations. So heap grooming, you have the stack and you have the heap, and they're two different memory locations.
The imagination just runs wild.
Right. So there are 2 different memory locations. One is for executing code. One is for, where memory is kept for variables and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
If you can manipulate that heap, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to store the value. Let's say, should I have admin access? The answer is false. I'm going to store that false in the heap here. But if I can then shift that address over, when it goes to check for false, it actually sees whatever garbage was in the heap. So that's what they could do here. They actually had the ability to manipulate the heap.
And it'll most likely evaluate to true.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a very interesting exploit, but honestly, like, those types of tactics are very common. Type confusion is a very common way for people to break down the logic of most systems.
So before you tell me what the danger is of this thing, and I think you already did, but we'll spell it out. I just want to mention that the article came out April 14th. So it's been about a half a month. So if you have closed and opened Chrome, or rebooted your phone, or rebooted your computer since then, you're most likely all set.
Probably all set.
Yeah. And for what you could do with this, I mean, there's worst case scenario, it causes crashes. And that's generally what happens with these types of exploits. They're not a hit. It's not 100%. It's going to work because my heap on my computer is different than Carl's, depending on where we've browsed and what we're looking at and right? So it's very hard for you to say, I'm going to manipulate this heap to be 100% always to work. So, and when it goes to access something and it can't, then it'll just crash. Your browser might crash. But in the absolute worst case scenario, then it would come back and give you access to run code you wouldn't want to run, or leak data, that shouldn't be leaked out on the internet.
Okay. Are there any other, besides, Edge and Firefox, are there any other sort of browsers that are under the radar that, are safer to use?
Honestly, not really. Chrome is I'll tell you, the Chrome's the browser I use, unless I'm hacking into organizations. What's that?
Iceweasel.
Iceweasel?
Wow.
It's on Kali.
Oh, bringing back the old
okay.
Old Kali.
Yeah. No. So unless we're hacking into an organization, we'll use Firefox most of the time, or we'll use the Chromium browser inside of Burp.
Yeah.
But if you're just day-to-day browsing, I use Chrome. Honestly, they're really good about keeping up on the updates and forcing you to install security updates.
Right.
So if I'm on a system where I've got to share it with other people, which is not always a good idea, like family members, and I've got different Amazon accounts, I may use one account on Firefox and one account on Chrome so that I can log into both of them at the same time without causing a problem. A lot of sites that they don't really like you to use in the same browser instances, even if they're tabbed, to be logged in as different people.
Right.
So that's one way to do it. And you can use Edge, Firefox, and Chrome. I usually keep all three installed.
Yeah, I have all three installed too. All right, let's take a break, guys, and we come back. Another sort of half security. Funny, half funny story.
Physical security.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. So stay where you are. We'll be right back. And we're back. It's Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Dwayne LaFlotte and Patrick Hines, the brains behind this operation. And we're busy laughing at people and hacks. This one is pretty cool. I think Dwayne would say this is, what would you say this is, Dwayne?
Oh, this one's awesome. This one's so awesome.
At least it's not wicked awesome.
Yeah.
I know. It's not wicked awesome, but it is pretty awesome.
So car thieves use tech disguised inside old Nokia phones and Bluetooth speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, you see some guy walking around your Toyota with a 1998 Nokia phone, like jump and tackle him. This is it's actually really kind of or a Bluetooth speaker, like there's a JBL speaker you can
remember the first Men in Black?
Yeah.
When he shot the girl with the quantum physics books because she was up to no good.
Yeah. He's like, clearly in this neighborhood, she's shady. Yeah, that was funny. I love that scene. So needless to say, this one's actually really interesting. A lot of people forget that their car is a computer.
Right.
Right. And the car communicates on what's called CAN, which is a controller area network. Think like TCP/IP, where computers talk over TCP/IP, but because you have a bunch of different devices that need to communicate that do different things, right? Tire pressure and how quickly the cylinders are firing and all that other good stuff. The CAN protocol is what they use to communicate. And there's a couple different protocols you can use. Like you could use I2C, you could use serial communications, but for cars, for automobiles, it's CAN, is the communication protocol.
And you said it's CAN?
CAN, yeah, Controller Area Network.
Okay.
So what's interesting about CAN is each auto manufacturer has the ability to do on that CAN bus whatever they want to do on the CAN bus. So they could encrypt all those communications. They could change the protocols. They could do all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
Just so long as the sensors that are plugged in understand how to communicate whatever that protocol is.
Right.
So what that means is most of them don't. Most of them don't encrypt any of that stuff because they go, who's going to be on the internal network in a car? Right? Well, the problem is everything is on that network. So in this particular case, what they've done is they've gutted these old Nokia phones. And when you jack that phone into the USB slot in the car, the phone gets access to the CAN network and it just issues to the key controller. Oh, yeah, I have the key and it's in the car. So start the engine, and it just starts the engine up because the engine controller doesn't know the difference. It's just receiving a CAN communication.
All right, so
that says it's validated the key.
So these devices can't actually open the door, can they? Can they unlock the car?
Well, okay, so that's a different device, actually. So
I know that can be done with
that
infrared.
Can be done, but that's usually through something like a Flipper Zero or a Hack RF or those types of tools where you can replay the door opening.
Right.
Now get this. You can do this outside the car.
What?
If you can pop the front headlight off of a car, you can get to the CAN bus that way.
And before you give this advice, I have to.
Okay. Well,
it's criminal career advice.
Yes, kids. To get access to the CAN network, you don't have to be in the car. No. There are all sorts of ways to get access to the CAN network.
Patrick, do you have insurance? You have liability insurance.
Yes,
really good lawyers.
Okay. It's not me. I didn't say this. Just don't come for me.
Yeah, so if you pop the headlight off of most cars, there's going to be a CAN wire there. There's a lot of CAN wires that go directly into the engine, so that you can get them there. So there's multiple places you can get to CAN wires without actually getting in the car. Interestingly enough, once you get the CAN network, you can do things like unlock the door, start the car, all that good stuff. So very cool stuff to play around with. So I'm a robotics coach. So CAN is what we communicate in all the time, right? CAN Communications operates all of our sensors, all of our...
So it's like Lua for cars.
Controllers. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's obviously wireless. It's near field, right? So you have to be near it?
No, it's on wire.
It's on
wired
wire.
Network.
Oh, so that's why you have to plug in the by USB.
Yep.
So these phones are not just regular old phones. They've been gutted.
Yes.
Yeah.
And replaced. That's a big trend now. We should talk about that. We have these USB cables. I think we've mentioned them in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Called OMG cables. And it looks like a standard iPhone USB cable or USB-C cable with the USB jack, the old-fashioned USB jack. Is a transmitter and a Wi-Fi access point and a web server and it's indistinguishable. I can't tell the difference. That's why I never let my cables out of my sight.
It's a great time to be alive as a hacker. Honestly, there's a lot of really cool interconnected systems. There's a lot of things burning all over the place.
Your town, your house, your garage,
right?
This is, awesome. And of course, the name of this show is "Be Careful Where You Stick Your Dongle," and we're gonna be.
Here goes our DG rating.
Yeah, it's okay.
I didn't say anything.
Patrick,
this is tacky. You've got the dirty mind.
Yeah.
And
we've met.
We'll talk about the perils of using the charging ports at airports later. But I just wanted everybody to know that. Is there anything that you can do in your car to protect against somebody using this tech?
No, that's the great, hit him with a hammer. But honestly, that's the great thing about this.
Park it in your garage.
I'm sorry, that's the sad thing. No, that's the great thing about this. Like, honestly.
He's conflicted. He doesn't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's either sad or awesome.
Imagine there's all these networks driving around that are completely open that anybody can get on those networks. And then we call them cars. And you can do all sorts of things on them, which is so cool. Yeah.
Are you going to tell people where they can download the software to load in their phone so that they can go and hack my car? Are you going to tell them?
All right. I'll put it in the show notes.
It's a complete separate device.
It's not that easy.
But Wayne knows how to do it.
Oh, yeah. They do it with a different. So it's interesting. Okay. So they're using a Nokia phone that's been gutted or whatever just to make it super simple for thieves.
Dwayne, how much are you going to charge people for those?
Yeah, they're charging $19,000 upwards for these devices.
Oh, you could do it.
Listen, you could do this
cheaper.
for a $35 Raspberry Pi. Actually, you could do it with a Pi Zero.
Right now.
You could do it with a Pi Zero for like $15.
About $200 right now.
You could
because you can't get them.
Well, that's true. And 2 pieces of 26 gauge wire. That's it, right? And you just
then you have to have the software,
right?
Which Dwayne will sell you
not
for.
So hard. Come on.
How much will you sell the software for?
Listen, I'll just price this. I'll just put it up in the show notes.
That's why guys like you get paid so much, because if you didn't make that kind of money, you could just be evil and then make 3 times as much.
It's funny. A lot of people do ask me that. They're like, "Hey, Dwayne, why?" Like when people figure out what I do, I'm at a cocktail party and people are like, "Oh, cyber," they get bored. But then you talk about like breaking into places and they're like, "Why don't you just steal stuff?" And I'm like, "Hey, it's the same reason I don't go break the window in your car and drive away with it. Like, I have morals."
Being a hitman makes a lot of money. That's not like we should do that.
I'm not looking to just shoot people.
All right, face. So you should, dear listener, you should follow Dwayne's lead. Just because you can does not mean you should.
That's right. Our society's based on that.
All right. So basically, the story here is you're screwed. There's nothing you can do.
Not much you can do. I mean, honestly, yeah. So unfortunately, it's a systemic change. Like each of the devices in the car that receive CAN communications and the main central computer of the car would have to be able to have an encrypted protocol that they could put on the wire. And the problem there is like, okay, well, how would you do that? You might do that with asymmetric keys. Well, if I can get to the controller or the computer in the car, I can grab those keys. So now you're talking about keeping like an encrypted store like they do on laptops. And it starts to get way complicated way fast. And then components start costing more and cars cost more. Nobody's going to do it. It's too much work.
All right. Okay. And from hijacking your car to Microsoft is on the chopping block here a little bit with a couple of different stories. Patrick, tell us about it.
So Microsoft 365 had an outage of web apps and services. It didn't seem to last too long. We actually use Office 365, and I had a couple of people call me, say, hey, was our system down? And I said, no, just wait. And it seemed to come on. Either we got the back end of it, but their problem was their cache system seemed to have something that wasn't working right. When you get a system this big, there's a lot of dependencies. There's a lot of things that rely on each other to work. And when you scale, caching can become the difference between the system being crushed under the weight of requests or it being happy and healthy. And so when the cache system goes down, it wasn't so happy. So we're calling it an outage, but it may not have been. It may be that things were still being served, but it was enough of a delay and enough timeouts were received that it was an outage. And it affected a long list of things like the Microsoft 365 suite, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Yammer, which I didn't know anybody was still using that, Planner. I didn't know anybody was using that either. Teams and 365 for the web.
I'm gonna mark this as not awesome.
No,
this is not awesome. This is just a boring configuration scalability issue.
No,
yeah. When I see these things, I have these images in my head of like things on fire and like there's
so you were hoping someone caused this, right?
Yeah, and they're like, oh, you know what? It's just we didn't put enough CPU in there and we didn't refresh the cache, or our bad. And I'm like,
are you the kind of person who like goes to an action movie and if there's not enough death, destruction, blood, and gore and guts, you're not? You want your money back?
It's far worse than that. It's far worse than that. If somebody dies of old age in their bed, he's disappointed. But if they get gored by a lion, manticore hybrid,
through
he's
the
happy.
window because he had a sandwich in his pocket, like that, you'd be like, yes, that's the way to go.
All right, so this is the old guy dying in the nursing home.
Exactly.
Of stories.
Yeah, which I'm going to mark
happily
that as not
surrounded
awesome.
by
It's
family and friends.
So anyway, the outage
awesome.
is over, right? It's by this time, certainly. All right.
And we're painfully cautious, about these. Not cautious, but aware of these things because so many people depend on them. And we hosted our own systems as long as we could because we had that feeling of control. Well, at least we can do something about it. If Google's down or Microsoft's down, what are you going to do?
Right.
You're not going to call them up and say, hey, I'm going to take my business elsewhere because they'll laugh you off the phone.
But I would also say, let's say if Microsoft's down, who are you going to do business with? Because everybody else is down too. So who cares?
It's a snow day. Is that what you're going to call it?
Yeah, it's a snow day. It's a cyber snow day.
This is your grid vacation. Get off it. All right, so there was another Microsoft story too. This was a little bit more awesome for Dwayne. So this
one's really cool.
Okay, go ahead, Dwayne.
All right, okay. So Microsoft Defender, which I'm a fanboy of. I have my like Microsoft Defender tattoo that says like it's the awesomest thing ever. It's a really great product. It does a great job of blocking all of the sort of well-known threats out there.
Comes with every copy of Windows that you install.
It's free. Turn it on. Hell, I don't even know how you turn it on.
It's on by default.
Yeah, it is hard to turn off. You have to install another antivirus provider to get rid of Defender. So don't just leave it. It's awesome. But in an ever growing need to expand the things that it protects, Microsoft added a feature into this latest rollout, which was enabling core isolation settings. So what this is supposed to do is make it hard to do what's called ROP chaining. So ROP chaining.
ROP?
Yeah. Okay.
Your head's going to explode when you hear about this.
All right.
ROP chaining is so cool. When I saw it for the first time, it was like magic. It was amazing.
All right, I'm waiting to be amazed.
Here's the deal. Let's say the three of us want to sit down. We want to write a virus. And we want to write a virus that gives us access to everything.
Okay.
Right? Maybe it does a little ransomware. Maybe it does a little C2 over DNS. Speaking of, great way to do a C2 over DNS because nobody checks it. But anyways.
It's criminal career advice.
All right.
Sorry, just had to put that in there.
It's okay. So we have our little piece of ransomware. It does a little C2 action, does it over DNS. It's awesome. The problem is all the code we wrote to do that is going to be detected by every antivirus on the planet.
Right.
Like one person's going to report it. It's going to get scanned and go, oh my God, it uses all these things and it shouldn't do it. But what if like a ransom note we can open up a newspaper and say, I need the word the from here, and I need the word, child from here, and I need the word whatever. And you keep taking these little bits to create the message, right? Like in like a kidnapping ransom note, right? That's what they did. They took magazines and cut out these letters. Same thing is, that's what ROP chaining is. I go to a DLL that's already on the system and say, oh, I need this small bit of code.
Did we talk about this before, maybe?
I think we might have mentioned it before.
I just don't remember ROP chaining, but...
That's what a ROP chaining... So ROP chaining is return-oriented programming, ROP. Okay. So when you make a call, like, you know how we write functions in code, right? Well, when that code gets compiled down into machine language just before, when it's in like an assembly language, you can jump to anywhere in that function. You don't have to start at the beginning of the function. So I can say, I only want these 4 lines of that function, and my code will jump to there, grab those 4 lines, and jump back out. And that's what return-oriented programming is I'm finding the bottoms of functions and then stitching them all together to create our virus.
You're living off the land. It's the ultimate living off the land.
It's almost like what a parasite is, if you think about it.
So great. So awesome.
You need help, buddy.
So awesome. And there's really cool utilities out there. Like if you're looking to do these types of ROP chains, XCT is a fantastic developer. I think he works for OffSec. Created a tool called ROPstar. You can get it on GitHub. You run ROPstar and it will find ROP chains for you. You can say, I want to do this, and it will just give you a ROP chain, which is amazing.
So wait, is this something that you use to create viruses, or is this something that you use?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, you use it to create viruses and bypass
protections. We're full of career criminal advice
Let
today.
me add some color commentary on this. So back a while ago, when me and Dwayne and a couple of our guys were on Hack the Box and doing that kind of thing, there was a box called Rope that required ROP chaining. And I think only about 100 people ever got it.
Before they retired the box, it was even less than that. I think it was like 50.
Wow. Yeah. So, and we were 4 of them. So this is not a common technique. It is not an easy technique. It's not something a script kiddie's going to do, but it is awesome. I will admit that it is quite awesome.
Honestly, there are a few things in my world where I'm like, oh, well, that's just configuration, whatever, and it's kind of boring. But there are a few things in my world where I go, that is... Yeah, like just
Mastery.
Eye-opening, exciting. Yeah, and ROP chaining is one of them. It's very cool stuff.
Wow. Dwayne, you need professional help.
Being
they're
said,
trying to prevent that.
Yeah, so that's what Defender was rolling out. Defender was trying to prevent that. What I find interesting and weird here, though, is they rolled in the LSAS memory protection dumping into this. And I think what they're trying, which is, LSAS is your local security authority. It's, if I wanted to break into your computer and I had privileged access, I can dump the LSAS and find all the credentials, all the usernames and passwords for people who have logged into that computer. So super useful for me to break into, say, a Windows domain controller and get everybody's username and password. So Microsoft was trying to roll in the LSAS protection into this particular ROP chain protection, and it just went horribly awry.
So what happened?
They crossed the streams.
Yeah, it's almost like they tried to put too much into this patch, and it started throwing warnings on people's computers, and it only supports certain chips, and people didn't understand it. And then normally LSAS protection is on so that nobody can dump credentials out of the LSAS. Although, listen, hacker advice, just turn it off before you dump credentials.
I'm not going to play it again,
man. Really cool?
This whole show is one career criminal advice episode.
So let's say you're going to dump LSAS credentials, right? Like you want to, right? If you do it on the local box, it gets protected and detected and that sort of stuff. But if you're on a different computer and point it at the computer you want to dump the LSAS off of, it dumps just fine. No issues. Microsoft doesn't see it.
All right, the main character in this movie just got his head cut off.
So exciting. All right. But anyways, so if you see these errors, like if you see that LSAS protection isn't on, it's probably because you have this new kernel stack protection on. So you don't need to worry about it if it's throwing this error.
Okay.
You'll be okay. So yeah, that's my...
that's a nice synopsis. Now to the clickbait. Be careful where you stick your dongle. The FBI says you should never use the charging port at an airport. Now, obviously, the question is, why? So I'm reading this article, and this is from escape.com in Australia. And it starts out by saying, how everything is great when we count on our phones for flights and all this stuff. And then they basically say the Denver branch of the FBI sent a tweet last week that rattled travelers. Although the warning was not believed to be linked to any specific threat, several government agencies issued similar warnings for travelers to be mindful of their, quote, cyber hygiene, unquote, when charging phones in public places, because it's increasingly possible for bad actors to access data or introduce malware and spyware on travelers' devices via public ports. USB ports are hard to avoid. You'll find them free of use at international airports, cafes, and hotels. However, experts are warning that people could be using their convenience, Patrick, to gain access to users' information. So I'm putting this to you, Dwayne and Patrick. How would, if these things are only connected to the power grid, is there a chance that two USB devices can find each other and start communicating?
I think of it more like a skimmer. So, the idea of that you go to a pump and you put your card in, and there's something on top of the place where you put your card in that reads it in addition to the pump reading it. And they're stealing information that way. Think of it as them putting something in line that doesn't get in the way of your charging. So this goes back to the OMG cables that we talked about.
So basically you just said, no, if it's only connected to the grid, there's nothing to worry about. But if there's something in the middle.
Yes. And you're not going to be able to detect it.
And you won't be able to see it from the outside.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Yes.
Dwayne will.
Yeah. Okay.
Mere mortals
Listen,
won't.
if you look at the USB port, it has, if anybody's ever shined a light in a USB port to see what's in there, there are 4 copper leads in there. Pure power only has 2. So if you're plugging into something that is only power, it should only have 2 copper leads in it.
You can actually see it if you get your flashlight and look in there.
Look in any USB port, you will see the copper leads. There's 4 strips of copper in there. 2 of them are for data and 2 of them are for power.
Dwayne, I don't believe it. You just gave criminal protection advice.
I'm gonna sell it, market
of career criminal advice.
I'm ashamed of myself.
So that's really cool. Okay, well that's great because every phone's got a little LED flashlight. So you just you're gonna see. You're going to see people bending over and staring into these things.
If it's only power, it's only going to have the 2. Yeah.
But what if I know that you're going to look for that and I only leave out the 2 power ones and just have the 2 data ones?
Then it won't work.
Won't work at all? Because it won't have any power.
So here's the deal. When you're communicating with a device, typically you need what's called a common ground or you run into issues. So that's why those cables of the power and ground are there too, so that they can be in a common ground with the phone, so that when the communications work, it turns it on. So you're better off if there's only 2 copper leads in there. Chances are it's only power.
Okay.
If there's 4 in there, then it's possible, for them to be doing data, and you should. I don't know.
Well, if there was a stand in the middle of the airport that said "Take a sandwich, leave a sandwich," would you eat a sandwich from it? Probably not. Same thing goes with Wi-Fi and where you put your dongle.
Do we need USB condoms? Is that
so?
You can use a public charger.
Just say no.
So this is really cool. So they say in this article, has my phone been infected? Losing battery life quickly, overheating, or higher data usage can be a sign your device might be infected. Spyware working in the background of your phone can slow down operations. CERT advises keeping your files and mobile data backed up. And public charging ports aren't the only cyber trap. Of course, public Wi-Fi can expose your devices and everything. So basically, well, and be careful.
So Dwayne and I just went, and we talked about this before. We just went through a process of replacing our phones, and I've been much more cognizant of not having my phone exposed to things that might infect it. I don't let my grandkids install apps on my phone. I've got an iPad. They can install anything they want on that I carry around.
Right.
But I'm not having, important communications on it. So it's going to get harder to stay secure, but it's possible.
Yeah.
You just have to build up the right muscles.
Right.
You have to build up the right habits, and they're not always convenient. In fact, most of the time they're inconvenient.
Yeah, sure.
But that's where the world we're living in. Your car, park your car in a place where you can see where somebody's accessing it, or you have control of it. Cameras. My mother has a house on the lake, where she lives most of the year. We're putting cameras there now because a lot of the old neighbors are gone, and we're not sure we trust just the neighbors neighborhood watch anymore. And so you have to keep reviewing. You have to question your assumptions. That's the big thing.
Okay.
Stop every year or every quarter and question all of your security assumptions and revisit what your.
What if you don't have any security assumptions? What if you're just a schmo?
If you have no security assumptions and you've listened to this podcast, you don't speak English.
You made it this far.
Congratulations.
You don't speak English if you've listened to this podcast. You don't have security assumptions.
We have a little bonus content here, and it's a question for you guys. Let's say you wanted to, let's say you're empty nesters. You've got 3 extra bedrooms or 2 extra bedrooms in your house, and you want to rent them out on Airbnb or something like that. Okay.
Sure.
So, because we're actually thinking about this. So we would replace the physical locks on the front, back, and all the doors, outside doors, with keypads, which you can program, right? So when you rent a room, you create a new code for those people, only for those people. Yep. You give it to them, and on the interior doors as well. So bathrooms are open, closets are open, but every bedroom, including your master bedroom and all the places where you don't want them to, have these locks, right? And even their rooms. So you program a lock for their room. Okay. Here's the question. And that's all good because I don't even have to be at my house, right? We can just lock all the doors that we don't want them in and give them a code and boom, we can. But here's the thing. If we're away, would you install cameras in the common areas? Like the hallway, maybe not pointing in the bathroom because that's creepy, but the hallway, the staircase, the kitchen.
I would instead install cameras facing the door in the rooms they shouldn't be going in.
Interesting.
So you're in your bedroom. There should be a camera facing the door. So if someone does breach that door, you've got it recorded.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and that way you're not infringing on anybody's rights.
That's great.
Like that. Yeah.
All right. So, are you saying that I should put away my art collection?
Bathroom cams are a bad idea.
No. Bathroom cams are out. I'm sorry. That's private, sacred.
It's a different site.
Yeah. So I should take the art off the walls.
If it's valuable.
Should I put a camera behind the painting so somebody takes it down? Boom.
Right. Yeah.
Put a
glitter bomb. Yeah.
Spring-loaded dart.
Oh, man, I got to talk to you guys more often about this stuff. These are great ideas. All right, well.
If you could get a shark with a laser beam, that would be nice.
Swimming in the... Yeah,
well, thank you guys. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We always have fun. And we recoil in horror at appropriate times as well. So I think that's why people like our stupid show.
Yes, sir.
And with that, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Talk to you later, guys.
Bye-bye.